Hi, this is Dr. Ed DeVries. I'm the director of Dixie Heritage, and you're watching video number 3 in the series of Southern Baptists for Southern Heritage. What we're going to do in today's video is we're going to show you the actual video footage of what transpired on the floor of the Southern Baptist Convention a few weeks ago when the convention passed its resolution condemning the Confederate battle flag. Earlier this week, I received a copy of this video, and I watched it. And two things happened, basically. The first is that as I watched it, I gained a new appreciation or a new respect for Southern Baptists. And by Southern Baptists, I mean just basically the ordinary, everyday, rank-and-file folks. Politically, a lot of times they'd call them the grassroots. Just the people who are just the regular, ordinary folks who make up your typical Southern Baptist church. Gained a lot of respect for them, because I realized that this resolution did not pass as overwhelmingly as we had been led to believe that it had. And so that renewed my faith in my fellow Southern Baptists. And of course, as I watched the video, I lost all respect for much of the leadership of the convention, basically because of the way that they did this. I'm just going to say it. They did it in a completely improper manner, so improper, in fact, that the resolution, legally speaking, did not pass. I mean, there's a right way to do things, and there's a wrong way to do things. There's a procedural way to do things, and then there's just the wrong way to do it, or an illegal way to do it. And they did it the illegal way. And that becomes very obvious as you watch the video that you're about to see, that they had no regard whatsoever for procedure, no regard for the rules of order, no regard for the rules of the convention. They were just going to push this thing through, whether the messengers wanted it or not. And regardless of anything, they were going to push this through. What you're going to see here in a moment, for example, is that there is an appeals court judge in Texas who's been a lifelong Southern Baptist. In fact, he formerly served as the first vice president of the Southern Baptist Convention. He's a former congressman. He formerly served there in Texas, and a great man, Judge Paul Pressler. And Dr. Pressler came to speak against this resolution, and he was denied that, and just the way he was handled and the way he was treated just goes to show you how far the leadership was willing to go, that the one person in their ranks that would oppose this was so violently treated at the convention, and so disregarded and so disrespected. That just goes to show you how far the leadership was willing to go to pass this stupid resolution. And so let's just get into the video here. And what you're going to see at the beginning, of course, is Dr. Floyd, the outgoing president of the convention, moderating the meeting. And he is going to bring this resolution to the floor. Immediately, it's going to be opposed. It's going to be spoken against. The person speaking against it is one of our Dixie Heritage subscribers, Dr. John Killian. Dr. Killian's also a Southern Baptist pastor in Alabama. He's also the chaplain general of the Military Order of the Stars and the Bars. He's going to speak against it. Then Dr. Rummage is going to get up. Dr. Rummage is with the Resolutions Committee. He's basically just going to try to blow off and dismiss everything that Dr. Killian said. And so let's just watch the video here.
The affirmed has it, therefore time will be extended. We return back to Dr. Stephen Rummage. Dr. Rummage, would you please continue forward in your report?
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. President. The next resolution we are asking Southern Baptists to adopt is based on one that was submitted to our committee. From the time that our committee first met together last Thursday, God has put it on our hearts to move forward with our own revision of this resolution. The Committee on Resolutions presents this to you unanimously and urgently. We ask you to join us in calling Southern Baptists to take a further step in the right direction concerning racial unity for the sake of our witness for Jesus Christ and for the sake of showing His love to all people. In keeping with President Bonnie Floyd's emphasis at this Southern Baptist Convention on the need for racial unity and in response to the real needs and hurts of our nation and our churches, I move the adoption of Resolution number 7 on sensitivity and unity regarding the Confederate battle flag. You will find this resolution on page 12 of the SBC Bulletin Tuesday, Part 2.
Thank you, Dr. Rummage. The question is on Resolution 7 on sensitivity and unity regarding the Confederate battle flag. Are you ready for the question? Microphone 4A, the chairman, the chair recognizes microphone 4A.
Thank you, Dr. Floyd. While I appreciate the sensitivity of the subject, and at the same time I appreciate the kind spirit that's been demonstrated in this resolution, to incorrectly link the historic symbol based on the St. Andrew's cause would raise further questions. Number one, would we further challenge United States symbols? For instance, the United States flag that flew over slave ships, or George Washington who owned slaves. I would hope we wouldn't make that move toward political correctness. Secondly, what will we do about Southern Baptist heritage? Will we cease to use names like Broadus and Manley and take Broadman off everything because they were avid supporters of the Confederacy? Will we cease having a Lottie Moon offering because she was a supporter of the Confederacy? Again, I hope not. I would plead with this body to reject this resolution for those reasons, and also for the fact that when you get home at the grassroots level, this is going to be a horribly divisive resolution. So in the name of unity, and yes, racial reconciliation, don't pass this resolution.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Dr. Rummage to speak on behalf of the committee.
Thank you. And my brother, I appreciate what you are bringing to the convention and the objection that you raise, but I do respectfully disagree. We are talking about one particular symbol that is used by some and is perceived by many as a symbol of racism and that causes great harm. We acknowledge that there are those who do not use the Confederate flag with that intention at all. But even so, we see that when people do use that, even unintentionally, that there are those who are harmed. And that's why we call for people to consider prayerfully whether to limit or discontinue use of that symbol.
Okay, I'm sure you probably noticed there that Dr. Killian got up. He gave a very passionate appeal to the messengers to reject this resolution. Basically, what he was calling on them to do was to vote against it when it came up for a vote here in a few moments. Before that happened, of course, I don't know if you realized what happened or not. There was a time extension that was granted by the chair, or by the moderator. Essentially, what had happened was there was no more time left to debate resolutions or to bring up resolutions. The previous segment of the business meeting had gone over time. And so this shouldn't have even come up at all. There was no time left in the agenda for this. That was the first procedural change, first of all, was that the time had expired. This should have never been brought up. The matter should have been tabled, which meant that it wouldn't come up again until next year. But instead, the chair just basically de facto decreed that we're going to extend time and we're going to go on and we're going to do this regardless. Because again, this was something that they were going to do. Plus, they didn't want to deal with other stuff that would have come up had they not extended the time. In other words, they wanted other things to run out of time, like, for example, discussing the fact that these same gentlemen who are bringing us this resolution against the Confederate battle flag are basically entering the convention into unholy ecumenical alliances with Islam. We talked about that in previous videos. We may talk about that again later. I don't know. Type in Southern Baptist Convention, Islam, New Jersey, Russell Moore. Type those into Google. All the stuff will come up, and you can find out about it for yourself. I don't have to give you all those details. But essentially, Dr. Killian asked the messengers to reject it. Then, of course, Dr. Rummage got up. Now what's going to happen is a pastor from Louisiana, Pastor Lupo, is going to get up, and he is going to put a motion on the floor to basically do away with this resolution, essentially asking that we not even vote on it, but basically just saying, let's just forget this thing. let's just take it off. Let's just erase it, essentially. And so let's go ahead and watch that clip.
This time, the chair recognizes microphone 7A to speak against this recommendation.
My name is Jason Lupo. I'm pastor of Parkview Baptist Church in Toledo, Louisiana. And I'm not really speaking against the motion. I think that we need to remove the motion. I know that there are a lot of politics in the Southern Baptist Convention, but this is a political issue, not a kingdom issue. And so I think the resolution needs to be removed completely. One of the main reasons is we've got media here, and they're going to construe and put things out there that we don't say, we don't mean, because that's what the media does. And I think that we as a convention can stand against any type of prejudice or any of those things that we're talking about this by loving people with Jesus, by loving people with the gospel. We've talked about evangelism. This motion, this amendment, this recommendation it needs to be removed. Thank you.
Okay, what you just saw there was Pastor Lupo making a motion, basically, that the resolution be removed, that it just not be voted on, that it just be dismissed. And what you're going to see in the next clip is that was basically ignored. Even though this motion was put out there, the chair just basically chose to pretend like it never happened. And so instead what's going to happen now is they're going to move on, essentially. There was a long line of people, I'm told, that wanted to speak to this resolution. Most of them wanted to speak against it. And basically they were all ignored. One of those that would have been ignored, of course, was Judge Pressler. I had mentioned him earlier, former first vice president of the convention, a well-respected judge in the state of Texas, a man who had formerly served as in the legislature, a man who had served as the first vice president of the Southern Baptist Convention and so forth. Highly respected man for a number of years. In fact, a personal friend of the president, Mr. Floyd, personal friend of most of the men who were bringing this resolution. And as I understand it, Judge Pressler had eaten dinner with these gentlemen the night prior, basically trying to appeal to them not to do this. And of course, they knew that he would be speaking to this from the floor of the convention. And they were so afraid that his words could perhaps have such an impact on the messengers of the convention, because Judge Pressler is such a highly respected person in the Southern Baptist Convention. They were so afraid of him speaking against this that they basically denied him the opportunity. At one point later in the convention, he actually commandeered a microphone to try to speak to this. And of course, when that happened, I'm told that his microphone was cut off and that he was very roughly and very disrespectfully treated. That's what this came down to, basically. But anyways, now that this motion to do away with the resolution is being ignored, essentially what's going to happen is the chairman is going to start calling on people to speak to the resolution, to speak in favor of it. The clip I'm going to show you here is one person. Of course, it always amazes me that when they want to get you to do something that, like this, it's like they always find a veteran. I don't know why. It's like they think if they can get the most decent, the most godly, the most moral, the most patriotic of people to do the stupidest things if they just find a veteran to advocate for it. The Democrats, the liberals, they do this like crazy. And so, if anything, I think the liberalism of these men who call themselves conservatives in the Southern Baptist Convention, in the leadership here, the fact that they would take this tactic, really just, it's like their liberal and conservative clothing mask kind of comes off for a second here. But anyways, I'll go ahead and show you the clip of the of this veteran that they put up there to basically say what he said.
The chair recognizes someone from the audience on microphone 3A to speak for this motion. Microphone 3A, you are now recognized.
Yes, thank you. I'm a 26-year-old Southern Baptist, and at the age of 19, I found myself in Afghanistan. I fought for my country. I brought indirect and direct fire and mortar fire home with me. I'm a patriot. I love my country, but I would remind you that we are citizens of the kingdom of God, and if we find something offensive or divisive within our own ranks, I think that we would first have to realize that we are secondarily citizens of the United States, and first and foremost, children of Jesus Christ and God. And for that reason, I speak for this and support the resolution fully.
Thank you. Yes, microphone 2A, do you have an amendment? And if so, would you like to give that amendment?
President, yes, I would.
All right, would you please make your amendment?
Yes, sir. My name is James Merritt. I'm a messenger from Crosspoint Church in Duluth, Georgia. Mr. President, I'd like to amend the motion, and if I get a second, I'd like to speak to it. I would move that we delete paragraph 6, which reads, whereas we recognize the Confederate battle flag serves for some not as a symbol of hatred, bigotry, and racism, but as a memorial to their loved ones who died in the Civil War and an emblem to honor their loved ones' valor. And then I would like to move that reword paragraph 12 to read as follows. Resolved that we call our brothers and sisters in Christ to discontinue the display of the Confederate battle flag as a sign of solidarity in the whole body of Christ, including our African American brothers and sisters.
All right, the amendment has been offered. If you have a copy of that amendment, would you be sure that we receive a copy immediately?
In discussions after the convention, in discussions even later in the convention, in some of the newspaper articles and press releases and things that came out after this resolution, the chairman of the meeting here, Dr. Floyd, the chief parliamentarian, and others would claim that Dr. Merritt's amendment to the resolution was totally spontaneous. I'm just going to say right now it was not. This was planned. This was staged. It was made to appear as though it was spontaneous, but it was not. Of course, everybody knows who Dr. Merritt is. He's a former president of the Southern Baptist Convention. He pastors one of the largest churches within the convention. What really surprised me about this was Dr. Merritt was somebody who I've always had great respect for up until this point. He's somebody who I thought was very in tune with his Confederate heritage. Of course, he mentions some of his ancestors who had fought in the Confederacy. And I know that in the past he had visited and decorated their graves. So he's somebody who I thought respected his heritage and was in tune with it. Obviously he's not, or else something has happened here that has changed that. I'm going to guess that certain people came to him that they probably have even used him in this because some of us, knowing the fact that he has been somebody who has been associated with Confederate heritage in the past, figured that maybe this would have more credibility coming from him. Essentially what happened was the leadership of the convention originally put up an amendment that though Dr. Killian and others, Dr. Pressler and others felt obligated to oppose it, just as I would have, and just as I do, and this is part of the reason we're doing these videos. Even though that resolution was something that we would have opposed, the wording of the original resolution, as you heard in the video, wasn't necessarily all that bad. Essentially, the original wording of the resolution did allow for the display of the flag at reenactments and in heritage events, and in the context of honoring our ancestors and our heritage and so forth. But then Dr. Merritt's amendment comes up and totally changes that. Under the Merritt Amendment, essentially, you can't even decorate a grave with it. You can't even use it at a reenactment and so forth. It calls for a complete ban, repudiation, and condemnation of the flag, which the First Amendment, as it was originally given, did not actually do. Of course, this is a moot point, because Pastor Lupo, of course, as you saw a few moments ago, that he had put a motion on the floor to remove the resolution. So the resolution should not have even been voted on. You can't amend something if it's been removed. At the very least, what should have happened when Pastor Lupo made his recommendation that the matter be removed, at the very least, what should have happened is that the chair should have basically said, there is a motion on the floor that this resolution be removed. Do I have a second? Of course, if there's no second, then the chair could have passed on it and moved on to new business. Or perhaps what could have happened is that there could have been a concern as to whether or not an actual motion had been made, since Pastor Lupo did not use the words, I make a motion, in which case he still suggested the removal, and so the chair should have said, if there was question as to whether or not an actual motion had been made, the chair at the very least should have said that he would entertain the motion. In other words, he should have determined the intent, and of course, none of that happened. And so we're talking about amending a resolution when there's actually a motion or a discussion on the floor to remove it that has not been dealt with, that has not been dispositioned. And so, so everything that happens from here forward is illegal, essentially, because there's no grounds to amend the resolution. There's no grounds to vote on and pass the resolution until the dispositioning of Pastor Lupo's recommendation, which is still on the floor, by the way, that the whole thing just be removed.
All right, you may be able to speak to your amendment, Dr. Merrick, so go right ahead.
My fellow Southern Baptists, I'm not speaking to you today just as a pastor of a church. I am the great-great-grandson of two men who fought in the Confederate Army. One is buried in a Confederate cemetery in Lynchburg, Virginia. One fought in the Battle of my hometown, Atlanta, Georgia. I cannot undo what they fought for, but they cannot undo what I wish they had done and what I pray we will do today. Make no mistake, this is a seminal moment in our convention. I believe that God has brought the SBC to both the kingdom and our culture for such a time as this. What we do today with this issue will reverberate through this nation not just today, but I believe 100 years from now. This is not a matter of political correctness. It is a matter of spiritual conviction and biblical compassion. We have a golden opportunity to say to every person of every race, ethnicity, and nationality that Southern Baptists are not a people of any flag. We march under the banner of the cross of Jesus and the grace of God. Today, we can say loudly and clearly to a world filled with racial strife and division that Southern Baptists are not in the business of building barriers and burning bridges. We're about building bridges and tearing down barriers. So I close with this. There is one thing no one can deny. This flag is a stumbling block to many African American souls to our witness. I rise to say that all the Confederate flags in the world are not worth one soul of any race. So my fellow Southern Baptists who I love with all of my heart, and thank God that I will die a Southern Baptist, I ask you to join me as one to support both this amendment and this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Merrick. Dr. Rummage, would your committee like to speak toward that amendment?
Mr. President, we are thankful to let the body decide and to make this. We do not wish to speak to this amendment.
Dr. Merritt, would you please go to the microphone again, and would you please read the language again and be very clear for us on where these matters are occurring.
Of course, now they're going to bring this to a vote. Of course, as I said before, they should not be. There is a matter on the floor still about removing the amendment. But again, the rules, the procedures, none of this seems to matter to the leadership. All they care about is making a statement, even if they have to make it over the objection of the people on the floor, even if they have to make it, in opposition to the rules. None of that matters. They just basically, they're going to cram this through no matter what. And so they're about to vote on this thing. One thing you may be noticing is that there is a gentleman behind Dr. Floyd in a dark coat and a striped tie. He is the chief parliamentarian. He, of course, his job back there, he should be instructing Dr. Floyd of all of the procedural errors that he's making here. Instead, what he's doing is he's probably telling him how to push this thing through in spite of the procedural errors. In fact, he will be the one who, after the fact, will try to justify all the procedural errors. Of course, obviously, as this was going on, he had to realize that these were procedural errors. He had to, of course, realize that there was a motion on the floor to remove this and so forth. But he doesn't care. He's just as complicit in this as everybody else is. And so now they're going to basically amend a resolution that should not be amended. And as a result of that, of course, the vote is going to be limited. But let's just go ahead and watch the clip, and we'll comment more about it later.
Yes, sir. Sean, I was headed to the bathroom.
It's okay. All right. After what I just said, you can understand why. I move that we delete paragraph 6, which reads, whereas we recognize that the Confederate battle flag serves for some, not as a symbol of hatred, bigotry, and racism, but as a memorial to their loved ones who died in the Civil War and an emblem to honor their moments of valor. And then I move to reword, Mr. President, paragraph 12 to read as follows. Resolved. Excuse me. Which resolve is that? That would be paragraph 12, whatever. It would be the penultimate paragraph, the one next to the end. Not the last one, but the one before that. All right, thank you. Yes, sir. Resolved that we call our brothers and sisters in Christ to discontinue the display of the Confederate battle flag as a sign of solidarity in the whole body of Christ, including our African American brothers and sisters. All right, thank you, Dr. Merritt. I believe we have that. Time has expired for this moment that we've already amended once. Therefore, if you are in favor of adopting the amendment by Dr. Merritt, resolution number 7 on sensitivity and unity regarding the Confederate battle flag, and remember we are voting on the amendment itself. So all in favor of adopting that amendment, would you please raise your ballots? Thank you. If you are opposed, would you please raise your ballot? I believe the amendment has been adopted.
Of course, you just saw the vote was taken to amend the resolution. And of course, the chair says that the amendment has been adopted. Of course, a lot of people didn't even vote. And the reason that they didn't vote was because they actually knew that there was a motion on the floor to remove the resolution. And you, of course, cannot amend a resolution that's been removed. And also, you can't vote on an amendment when there is a motion for removal on the floor and so forth. You would think that the people who were attending the convention, even though they're just ordinary Southern Baptist people, the fact that they come to the convention as messengers means that they are a little more astute, if you will, than just your typical church member. In other words, a lot of these people understand how a business meeting is supposed to work, and they understand Robert's Rules of Order and so forth. And so, they know that, hey, there's something else on the floor here. Why are we moving on? And so a lot of people didn't even vote. And so the vote that was taken was actually kind of a thin vote. because a lot of people weren't voting because they were confused, and by the time they realized, hey, wait a second, we just voted on an amendment when we've got this other matter on the floor that's still unresolved. And then, of course, they'll go to start voting on the resolution itself, and you're going to start hearing from the floor, point of order, point of order, point of order. And the reason why is because messengers are on the floor calling for a point of order. They're trying to get the attention of both the chair and the parliamentarian, basically to bring up the fact that, hey, wait a second, we just voted on an amendment when we didn't deal with the resolution removal. We didn't deal with the original motion that was out on the floor. Let's do this right. Let's do this procedurally. Now, let me say this. There were some people calling for a point of order because they opposed the resolution, and they did not want to see it pass. And so calling for the point of order is a way to just basically do away with it. Of course, there are some people who want to pass the resolution. They're also calling for a point of order, and the reason why is because they want to pass it properly. In other words, they don't just want to pass it. They don't want to railroad it through like the leadership wants to. They actually want to do it the right way. They want to do it honorably with integrity according to the rules. And so they're calling for a point of order as well so that this can be addressed properly. Of course, the reason the leadership is afraid to address it properly is because what probably would have happened, and you heard the applause when Pastor Lupo put it out there, hey, let's just remove this whole thing. Thunderous, thunderous applause. And so probably the motion to remove would have not only been seconded, it would have been overwhelmingly voted for, and then they never would have even had the chance to pass the resolution the proper way. But still, there are people who, on both sides of this issue that want to do it right, and so you'll hear the calls, point of order, point of order.
Now we come to resolution number 7, as amended, on sensitivity and unity regarding the Confederate battle flag. All in favor? All in favor? I'm sorry, we're in the middle of taking a vote. Resolution number 7, as amended, on sensitivity and unity regarding the Confederate battle flag. As amended, if you are in favor of Resolution 7, as amended, would you raise your ballots? Thank you. If you are opposed to the resolution and the amendment to the resolution, would you please raise your ballots? Then resolution number 7, on sensitivity and unity regarding the Confederate battle flag, as amended, has been adopted.
Of course, you can hear the clamoring from the floor, people calling for a point of order, people basically shouting to the moderator that there's still a motion on the floor. There's somebody apparently in microphone 1 who wants to properly address this matter, and the chair is basically ignoring that person. And of course, there's someone yelling, microphone 1, microphone 1. Of course, the chairman knew exactly what was going on at microphone 1, that there was somebody that wanted to point out the fact that this was being done illegally and improperly, and totally in violation of proper procedure and Robert's Rules of Order and so forth. And so they're just ignoring that person. And then finally, Dr. Floyd says something to the effect of, hey, quit interrupting me. We're trying to vote on something here. And of course, the messengers on the floor are yelling at him that they don't need to be taking a vote on this resolution because they still haven't had an opportunity to vote on whether or not they should remove the resolution, because Pastor Lupo's suggestion to do away with the resolution is, of course, still on the floor, still undispositioned.
Kent Cochran was at microphone number 4, relating to Kent Cochran at microphone number 4. And we cannot get to that at the present time. Dr. Rummage, Chair recognizes you.
Of course, there are several calls coming from the floor still for point of order. And Dr. Floyd's trying to basically run interference, run distraction, basically. He's got one of the secretaries behind him kind of helping with this. Of course, the parliamentarians helping with this. They're trying to bring another matter up on this, and they're trying to bring someone else to the microphone and all of this. And of course, none of that seems to be working. And they try to move on. And of course, in the background, you can hear point of order, point of order. The person who's shouting the loudest is actually Judge Pressler. He's the one shouting the loudest. His voice is the distinct one that you hear. And several points of order, of course, that he wants to bring up. One, being the fact that he was not allowed to speak to the matter when everybody knew he was going to. Also, that others were not allowed to speak to the matter. Of course, the point of order is that there's still a resolution on the floor, or rather there's a motion on the floor to remove the resolution. That's still not been dealt with. They voted on an amendment, and they voted to pass the resolution when they never dealt with the original motion to remove the resolution. Of course, that's still on the floor. Another thing that's sitting on the floor, and Judge Pressler is a stickler for procedure. He should be. For most of his life, he was an appeals court judge. And so he should be a stickler for procedure. But essentially what happened is you saw the vote was taken, and very few ballots went into the air. You saw the camera pan, and you only saw a few people raise their ballots in the air. And the reason for that is because a lot of people are still confused. They're thinking to themselves, why are we voting right now? And so there's still a lot of confusion on the floor. But some people did raise their ballots, and there were other people then who raised their ballots to vote against the resolution as well, who did vote in opposition. And of course, I was not there, so I had to contact people who were there, and I asked them, I said, hey, of course, all the reports that I got from the media and even from people I've talked to who were there led me to believe that this was overwhelmingly passed. But when I watched the video, there were very few hands that went up. And of course, based on the applause that Dr. Lupo received and that Dr. Killian received, I said, I have to ask myself, did this actually pass? And I was told that it did, that there were probably more hands that went up for it than against it. And so the resolution passed, presumably, as far as that goes. Of course, we can't know for sure because the video didn't pan, the camera didn't pan to show the audience for the vote against. So I'm not saying that there were more votes against it than for it. But what I am saying is that when it's close, that when there's any question, when there's any doubt, what you do is you go to a roll call vote. Or at the very least, what you do is you retake the vote, and you not only have people raise their ballots or show their hands or somehow or another signify visibly that they're voting for or that they're voting against, but you freeze that vote until such a time as it can be counted. And so, for example, then when you retake the vote, you would have everybody who was in favor raise their ballots. They all raise their ballots, and then they hold their hand up, perhaps for several minutes, while people count the hands. And then that count will be relayed to the chair. The chair, of course, will announce that count so that everybody in the room can hear the count, just in case somebody wants to contest it. Maybe somebody else had counted and they counted a different number. It's out there. Everybody knows the number. And then when, of course, there's no objection to that number, then, of course, people take their hands down. Those opposed, they would raise their hands. Again, they would hold their hand up long enough for their hands to be counted, for that number to be announced from the chair. And, of course, then if there's no objection to that number, then it's determined who wins, who loses, whether it passes, whether it doesn't pass. That wasn't done. But then again, who cares about those procedures when you don't even care about the simple thing like, hey, there's another motion on the floor. Hey, you have a highly respected former vice president of your convention who is also a career tenured, long respected judge and former congressperson who has spent his entire life in elected service to not only the convention but also to the state of Texas and to his country and so forth, trying to call you on a point of order. So if you can ignore all those things, who cares about the rest of it, right? And so anyways, the judge finally raises enough of a stink that finally the chief parliamentarian gets up there and basically tells him to go eat a banana.
Advises the chair to rule the messenger's point of order not well taken.
This is the reason that the point of order is not well taken. Chair recognizes Dr. Andrew Bear, Chairman of the Order of Business Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have two motions.
And so there you have it. Of course, Judge Pressler still speaking from the floor, and you can hear him kind of fading out as the business meeting moves on, and as Judge Pressler is very rudely and very disrespectfully removed from the floor. Again, like I said, I lost a lot of respect for the leadership of the convention in watching this. Of course, I gained a lot of respect for several godly men like Judge Pressler, and also just for the rank and file people of the convention, people who were willing to shout from the floor that, hey, there's a problem here, we're not doing this right. People who were raising objections, people who wanted to speak to the issue, and just you're judging the applause on both sides of the issue. You know, it tells me that there are still a lot of just rank and file Southern Baptist people who wanted to do the right thing here and just wanted to remove this resolution and just not put it up there. And, you know, that was the right thing to do. I think Dr. Killian was right when he said that. I think Pastor Lupo was right when he said that, that this issue, we're really not reconciling anything by passing this resolution. We're just further dividing ourselves. And that's very much true. Of course, we're commanded to honor our fathers, and we're also commanded to love our neighbors. And yes, we do have neighbors who are black. We do have neighbors who are of all different races, colors, creeds, and so forth. And we're to love them. And so, you know, we don't, in other words, we don't have to disrespect our ancestors to love our neighbor. The two commands are not mutually exclusive of each other. We can do both. And that's what the leadership of the convention doesn't understand. They think that in order to love your neighbor, you have to disrespect your ancestors. And that's just not the case. Pastor Lupo realizes that, of course, and that's why he wanted to remove this. Dr. Killian realizes that. Judge Pressler realizes that. And a lot of other people on the floor of the convention did as well. And so I could go on and on and on and on about this. You've seen the video. You can draw your own conclusions. Here in a second, there's going to be an email address up on the screen. If you'd like to email me and ask me any questions, feel free to do so. Again, this is Dr. Ed DeVries, Southern Baptist for Southern Heritage. Until next week, God bless.